What's up guys, Elliot here with my 5 key takeaways from the Australian Grand Prix weekend. Let's get into point number 1. And it really was a miserable weekend for Carlos Sainz. He had difficulty in qualifying in P9. There was a red flag that came out caused by Fernando Alonso just as he was about to complete his first flying lap in Q3, and that meant that it invalidated the lap. And then when he went out for his second lap in Q3, Ferrari were having a few issues with his car, which meant he got out a bit late in the session. He didn't get the ideal tyre prep lap that he wanted, or multiple laps as a lot of the drivers were doing, and that again really put him on the back foot and meant he had a messy lap and only qualified in P9. And then his issues compounded into the race. Ferrari having an issue with the steering wheel on the grid, which meant he had to change the steering wheel last minute, and he had a really poor getaway. You would expect a slightly worse start on the hards, but he actually kicked into an anti-stall on the grid. If you've watched the onboard, just bogs right down, all the cars overtake him, and I think he drops about 5 places on the first lap. And then on the second lap, he probably got a little bit too eager to start making up places, and he was trying to overtake one of the Haas cars into turn 9 and just completely overcooked it, went onto the grass, skidded onto the gravel trap and beached his car. So incredibly disappointing for Carlos. The Ferrari battle right now between him and Charles is looking very one-sided. I mean, he's 38 points behind already, and at some point this year Ferrari are going to have to prioritise one of their drivers if Red Bull do mount a title challenge, which will come on to Red Bull in a bit. It's really disappointing for Carlos, especially with his teammate absolutely dominating the weekend. Charles getting the pole and the win, managing to fend off Max Verstappen at every restart, ended up finishing the race with a huge margin. Yes, of course, Max went out with a DNF, but it was a dominant display from Charles, and it would be good for Carlos if he can get that first win on the table and start to build up a bit of confidence and momentum. But it's looking already, 3 races into the season, it's looking tough for Carlos to mount that championship challenge now. And McLaren are back. It was a great weekend for the McLaren team. Norris qualified in 4th, best of the rest, and only behind a Ferrari and 2 Red Bulls, and Ricciardo in 7th as well. Good weekend for him, and even better in the race. Both of them taking advantage of issues with cars ahead of them on track. Norris finishing in 5th and Ricciardo in 6th. They just always seem to be on the same bit of track. They were nose to tail the whole race. Norris was nursing an issue at the end of the race, so Ricciardo was asked to keep in formation, but fantastic result from McLaren, and I feel like this is where they should be. They obviously had a poor start to the season, and really that early season Barcelona promise just went away, and they've been really on the back foot. And I think this is more indicative of the pace that McLaren have in the car. They were challenging the Mercedes early on in the race, and they seem to be on top of things, and Norris seemed to be reiterating that he felt like it was track specific and they were only up where they were because of the track. But I think a lot of lap time does come from understanding of the car. I mean, we've seen that with Mercedes. They can unlock lap time without really bringing any upgrades, and I think it's going to be the same here for McLaren. Getting over their brake issues, understanding the car a bit more. Really good result from McLaren. Hopefully they can build on from here and cement that 4th place in the championship. And I'll tell you who else is back. Sebastian Vettel. He's back on the grid this weekend, his first race weekend of the year, following his 2 races out with COVID. It's good to see Seb back, although it was a very difficult weekend for Sebastian and Aston Martin as a whole. He had a messy weekend with crashes and reliability issues. He got a fine for riding a moped on the track, and really an unforced error from Sebastian Vettel in the race with his crash, just getting on the curb, losing the car and dropping it into the wall. And of course a messy weekend for his teammate as well, picking up the penalty in qualifying for that crash with Latifi. Seb did seem a little bit disinterested. I did see social media activity where people seem to suggest he seems almost done with F1 now. I don't know if I agree with that. I think he's probably not feeling 100% yet after his struggles with illness, and the car was pretty dreadful. They were probably the slowest team on the grid today in Melbourne, so hopefully it's only onwards and upwards from here with Sebastian and Aston Martin, but it was a difficult weekend for them. And it was another DNF for Max Verstappen. It was already looking like a bit of a challenging weekend for him. He was constantly complaining and having issues with the car, not feeling comfortable in the car. Red Bull and Max were going into the race knowing that they were nursing an issue, and that unfortunately reared its head for Max. And you can't really win the championship this early on in the season, but you can definitely lose it. Max is already 46 points off Charles. I mean, that's not far off 2 race wins with your opponent not scoring any points, and right now the Ferrari's looking pretty bulletproof. Red Bull powertrains seem to be having a bit of an issue at the beginning of the year. Christian Horner did say in a post-race interview that it wasn't powertrains related, but AlphaTauri have had a number of issues with one of their drivers not making it onto the grid in the last race, Jeddah. And of course they had the double DNF in Bahrain and DNF for Max here in Australia. It's disappointing, and they do seem to have the fastest car. Yep, they seem to be having tyre issues and maybe didn't quite get their car into the right setup in Australia, but they do seem to have a very good package and a good car, and it's going to be crucial for them to get over their reliability issues, because I mean they're already behind Mercedes, and right now Mercedes don't have a great car comparatively to Red Bull and Ferrari. And if Mercedes can unlock the performance that they claim is in the car, Red Bull have already dropped a number of points compared to them. Disappointing for Red Bull as a whole. So we had a number of track changes with Australia this year, getting rid of a few of the turns, trying to aid in overtaking. And initially when we started the race weekend, there were 4 DRS zones. This got reduced down to 3. They removed the DRS zone between turn 8 and turn 9 due to safety concerns. Hard to tell whether the track changes actually had a really good impact on the race or whether it was the new cars. I'm probably leaning towards the new cars, to be honest. The reprofiling of turn 11, which they slightly widened the corner and the entry to help with overtaking, didn't really seem to have too much effect. It does seem that we are still quite reliant on DRS, particularly in Australia. It was pretty good. We did see some overtakes, but we didn't have loads. But then again, I don't think you want too many overtakes. You don't want it to become too easy. Kevin Magnussen said earlier in the weekend that actually if you have too many DRS zones, you can't defend. If there's a slight performance deficit to the car behind, then you just can't hold them back, and you don't really have any defence. And in F1, we want to see overtakes, but we want to see people being able to defend as well. And if people can just DRS drag past them, that's not super fun. So I'm kind of glad they did remove the 4th DRS zone. Albert Park's not the easiest track to overtake on. Overall, it was an improvement. So, what did you think of the race in Australia? Let me know what you'd give it out of 10 in the comments below. I'd give it a 6. Pretty decent, but could have been better. Highlight of the weekend for me was Ted post-race in the crowd doing a shoey out of one of the fans' shoes. If you haven't seen it, go find a clip of it. It's hilarious. On to Imola next, and it's the first of the sprint races, so it'll be interesting to see what sprint race is like around the Imola circuit. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.